The one and only Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News at TSN Mike on both Twitter and Blue Sky joins us on the Adam Gold Show. So I have this question. I'm just wondering, because there's only 2.5 weeks left in the basketball season. Would North Carolina be in the at-large pool if it were a 76-team bracket?
They'd probably be in the field if it were a 76-team bracket. And if that's a incentive enough for Tar Heels fans, then their standards are not what they used to be. Let's put it that way.
Oh man, I love Seth Davis, but Davis kind of carrying the mail for the NCAA if they expand this field is kind of a bummer, because I feel like we need pushback. Here's the one thing I will say, because I think he's right about this. While we don't need it and it's completely unnecessary, I do think we'll all get over it when they do ultimately expand, because I think they're going to expand, and I don't think they're going to stop at 76.
Here's how we don't get over it, Adam.
Okay.
First of all, it makes the regular season less meaningful. And there are already legions of especially loud voices in our business who don't want to pay attention to college basketball from November to March because it's hard.
Right.
There are 360 teams. There are 75-ish, 80 high major teams, whatever the number is. It's a lot of teams. It's a lot of players. It's hard.
Yeah.
If you only know who LeBron is, you can follow the NBA, which is kind of where we are in the larger public discourse about sports generally.
Yeah.
Everybody follows the NFL. And then everybody ignores what they want to ignore. And so why give them another reason to ignore college basketball until March? You're telling fans that it really doesn't matter if you excel. I mean, I hate to use Carolina as an example, given that it's a great program, and I like all the people involved. But they have played 11 games last time I checked, and I think this still holds because sometimes the quad records change a little bit. 11 games against quad one and won one of them.
Yeah.
So you're winning less than 10% of your hardest games, and that's what we'll put in the field. So you make the regular season less meaningful. You make the bracket, which is such an important part of why this tournament is the most popular postseason tournament in America, the most popular sporting postseason in America. And the reason I say that is I'm not talking about sheer numbers, although the sheer numbers are great. It's about percentage of interest relative to the ordinary percentage of interest. So if college basketball's regular season value of interest is X, then the postseason is probably 4 to 5 times X.
Yeah.
In the NFL, it's probably only about 2X, and it may be less than that until you get to the Super Bowl. So that's the difference. That's what you're doing, is you're making it more difficult for the bracket to be filled out, to be comprehended. How do you do 8 fake games when you're trying to put the bracket together, as opposed to just really, I mean, with the 16s, it doesn't matter. You pick them almost as a tiebreaker, and then they're going out anyway. 999 times out of 1,000, they're going out anyway. But then, okay, so now you have to fool around a little bit with a couple 11 seeds. Now we make that number 4 games more than what we had before, or more if we go to 76. So what you're doing is telling all the people who do the bracket pools, we're going to make your lives that much harder. And you know what they're going to say? Oh, the heck with it. I won't bother. I won't pay attention. I won't watch. I'll be done. And that's what they're asking for. In exchange for what?
I know.
What do they get in exchange?
The networks don't want it.
Don't want it.
Right? The networks don't want it. The two companies, and in this case it would be Turner, because they do those first 4 games, although CBS might get involved in it. Who knows? If we're even going to be able to watch CBS, if you're a YouTube TV household, as I am, we might lose all of them. I need to watch Rory McIlroy win the Masters, by the way, although I could probably backdoor at Masters.com. What I don't get is that the networks don't really want these games. No. So why are we going to have them ultimately? And I'm positive we will, because, no tournament has ever not gotten bigger.
My hope is that is that this season will convince the loudest voices in that department, starting with Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC,
right,
that it's not necessary, that you're going to get a large number of teams regardless. There are 68 teams in this year's tournament. There will likely be 23 of those 68 teams coming from two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not necessary to expand it to assure that they get more. I know there was a concern, and probably fairly so, that if you went to 16 teams in the SEC and 18 teams in the Big Ten, that it would be difficult to get a fair share of teams in. But this year is showing that's not true. It's not true in the least. Right. The SEC, if you look at the bracket projections that are out there, and you can trust me or not, I prefer that you do, but if you don't want to trust me, look at the bracket matrix and see the consensus. And my projections line up with with more or less, not on every single seed line, but in regards to the broader field, I looked at my field last night and it all checks out. It's the same group as it is there. So it's 13 SEC, 10 Big Ten. And there's a lot of grace granted to the SEC lower teams to get 13 in there.
Right, because their records are not great.
Yeah, I mean, we're overlooking a lot of defeats at Oklahoma and Arkansas, and to a lesser degree, Vanderbilt. Overlooking a lot of defeats to look at the fact that they're in an impossible league and the fact that they did win significant games along the way in non-conference particularly, but then also in conference play. So I'm hopeful that someone stands up and says, look, this is bad business. You don't do something the customers don't want.
Well, yeah, the problem is that I feel like you already referred to Greg Sankey, and we're talking with Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News. And I just don't think Greg Sankey really cares about these sports. I think he only cares about control and power and how much money he believes he can get for the SEC, and that's what it's become. It has become, basically a high-stakes game of mergers and acquisitions, and he's just trying to gobble up as much. And if that sounds like a personal indictment of Greg Sankey, well, then it is what it is, because I don't believe he cares about the sports. I'm not sure Tony Petitti cares about the actual sports games and athletes. I think they only care about control. But, again, I just think it's inevitable. So I think ultimately we'll all just kind of grin and bear it. We didn't need 68. We didn't need 65. 64 would have been better, but that's not where we are.
We did need 65 because once we got to a certain number of conferences, it would have shrunk the at-large pool.
Yeah, by one.
So I understood the 65. 68 was a nice compromise against the ESPN push for 96 in 2010. So people know why we're at 68.
96?
2010, there was some concern. CBS didn't want, they were paying $700+ million for annual NCAA tournament rights then. There was concern that it wasn't worth that any longer, and they weren't eager to pay that. So Turner stepped in and said, "Okay, we'll help. We'll help pay that $700 million." And I think that the first four was a slight concession to that, and also to the coaches who had pushed for a broader field because they think it saves their jobs to finish 15-15 and get a bid.
Yeah,
I don't think it would, but they think that.
It's not as bad as I thought it would be, but it will get worse when we expand. All right, let me get to a couple of other things with Mike DeCourcy before we have to say goodbye. I know you're a hockey fan, and you're a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. Sidney Crosby just doesn't lose international tournaments, although Jacob Slavin would not let him score. So your big takeaway from the Four Nations, which people have been now gushing over for the last 10 days, and for those of us who cover the sport pretty closely, it has been awesome to see this national groundswell of, my gosh, this is great. What was your takeaway from it?
Yeah, I thought it was. I don't imagine they'll ever go back to the NHL All-Star game because they were trying so hard to make that interesting, and no one really cared any longer.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get the players to compete,
Right.
then it's not a worthwhile exercise. And they put the flags on this, and now they're playing, and they're playing hard. And I did not like at all the way Saturday night's game started. I thought it was a farce. I thought honestly that all three players should have been thrown out of the game, and that
in an Olympic tournament they would have.
Yeah, I know, and they took advantage of the NHL's appeasance of this, and I thought it was garbage, to be honest with you. I lost a lot of respect for those players when they did that, but I was glad that in the gold medal game, or whatever you want to call it, the trophy game, that stuff was gone, and they played, and they played hard, and it was great hockey.
Yep.
And great hockey is always wonderful. And the way ESPN presented it by playing the Miracle the opening, or not the Miracle opening, but the Miracle speech at their opening was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so it was a great show. And I wrote earlier in the week that's how like, I don't know if it saves the NBA All-Star game to go in that direction, play the USA versus the world, but I bet they'd play harder. I tell this story, Adam. I did last year. I was doing Big Ten basketball and beyond, and we went live on Sunday night. And when we were done, I came back to my hotel, and there's a bar to the right, and there are TVs. And I looked up at the screens, and the score was, I believe, 181 to 163, and there was still like 7 minutes left in the game. And that's all I needed to see, to know that it wasn't worth my time. I don't think it would be the case in a USA versus the world NBA All-Star game.
The ultimate thing is you got to get players to buy in. If players don't buy in, and I was frankly surprised at the level of buy-in, and I shouldn't have been. In retrospect, I shouldn't have been, because best on best, as they call international hockey at its finest, has been something that the players have desired for a decade. It has been a long time since, I believe, 2016 was the last time, right? 2014 was the last Olympics. 2016, they sort of had it with a World Cup that preceded the season. Right. But so it's been about 10 years since we've had anything resembling best on best. 2016 gave us some strange, North American team. We had USA, we had Canada, and we had North America, which is weird because I would think that USA and Canada, if we're not all one country yet, would be encompassed in North America. That's it. We don't have to get into that. But so I underestimated just how much it would matter to these guys. And, you and I agree on the fighting aspect of it, but I thought that game, first of all, that was a tone setter for the game, regardless of whether it was good or not. And I'm not arguing with you at all. I'm not a fighter. I'm not a fan of any of that. But the rest of the game was played Saturday night, was played at such a high level and such a level of physicality that I kind of forgot that we had three players standing in the penalty box for the first 5 minutes of the game because they were fighting. But I loved the buy-in, and I think we saw that from the first couple of games, even before we got to USA-Canada. I'm not sure we can do it every year because I think you would lose something, but we are going to have the Olympics next year, and I think 2 years after that, we'll have an expanded one of these to incorporate Czechia, Switzerland, Germany, and theoretically, Russia would be involved as well. Although right now, Yevgeny Malkin might be the number one center for Russia, and that ain't good because Yevgeny is past his sell-by date. If you ask me, let me ask you one more thing, Mike DeCourcy, because I know you're a Steelers fan. Are you ready for the Aaron Rodgers era? In Pittsburgh?
That is not going to happen. No. Everybody's doing that just because they know it gets Steelers fans wound up. That is not going to happen. He does not fit the organization. It won't happen. I still think that they're going to go with another year of Justin Fields. I think that's what will happen.
Fields, not
which
Russell?
I am in favor. I'm sorry?
Fields,
no,
not
I don't
Russell
think
Wilson?
Run that back.
Okay.
No, I don't think they're going to run that back. I'm in favor of going with Justin Fields if they go to an offense that would be similar to what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. I think that Justin can excel in such an offense. I mean, I don't necessarily mean to Super Bowl level, but I think he can excel in an offense where it's 1-2 run or 1-2 extend the play, and not 1-2-3 maybe 4, which is not really what he does well. Because when he usually gets to 3 or 4, he throws an interception or gets hit and fumbles. So it's not do what you're best at, and that's why Philly won the Super Bowl, because they looked at the first 4 games and said, this isn't working. It doesn't matter what you as the offensive coordinator excel at. It matters what the guys who are executing excel at. And I think that's what made Hurts excel, which was 1-2, go ahead and start to move and see what you can do. Take off, extend the play, but don't look for 3 unless you're on the move.
Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News. Good luck to your Steelers. I'll talk to you before we get to the NFL season. Sure. I thank you very much for your time, and we have a lot of things to talk about in the near future, I'm sure. All right, sir. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you later.
You too, Adam.